The old church bells rang out across the neighborhood as 15-year-old Maya walked slowly up the stone steps of Grace Community Church. Her white cane tapped gently against each step, counting them carefully. 1, 2, 3, 15 steps total. She made a mental note for next time. Being blind since birth had taught her to remember these little details that most people never noticed. Her mother walked beside her, occasionally touching Maya's shoulder to guide her around a loose stone or point out where the handrail was. "The music room should be just down this hallway, sweetheart," her mom said softly. Maya could hear the nervous worry in her voice. Even though she was trying to hide it, this was Maya's first day at a new church. Her family had moved across town 3 weeks ago when her father got a new job, and finding the right church had been important to all of them. Music had always been Maya's gift, her way of connecting with the world around her. She had been playing piano since she was 3 years old, starting with simple melodies and growing into complex pieces that could make grown adults cry. Her whole church, Pastor Williams, had treated her like family. The congregation had watched her grow up, cheering for every small victory and supporting her through every challenge. She had been their main pianist for the youth group since she was 10, and everyone there knew that when Maya played, something special happened in the room, but this was different. This was starting over. Maya's fingers traced along the smooth hallway wall as they walked. She could smell fresh coffee brewing somewhere nearby and heard the distant sound of voices chatting in another room. The building felt bigger than her. Old church, more formal somehow. Her footsteps echoed differently here, suggesting high ceilings and long corridors. "Here we are," her mother announced, stopping in front of a door marked with a sign Maya couldn't see but could smell the fresh paint on. "Room 12, Youth Music Ministry." Maya took a deep breath and knocked gently on the door. She heard footsteps approaching, then the door swung open with a slight creak. "Can I help you?" came a man's voice. It was deeper than she had expected, with a formal tone that made her straighten her posture automatically. "Hello, I'm Maya. I called last week about joining the youth choir as a pianist," she said, extending her hand in greeting. She had practiced this introduction in the mirror at home, wanting to make a good first impression. There was a pause, a longer pause than felt comfortable. "Oh," the man said, and Maya could hear something change in his voice. You're Maya, I see." Maya's mother stepped forward. "I'm Rebecca, Maya's mother. We spoke on the phone with the church secretary about Maya joining the music program. She's been playing piano for 12 years and has extensive experience with church music." Yes, of course," the man replied, though he didn't sound particularly welcoming. "I'm Director Peterson. I run the youth choir program here. Please, come in." As they entered the room, Maya immediately oriented herself by sound. She could hear the gentle hum of fluorescent lights overhead, the creak of wooden chairs arranged in rows, and most importantly, the presence of a piano somewhere to her left. Her ears had learned to pick up the subtle acoustic signature that pianos created in a room. "So," Director Peterson began, and Maya could hear him moving around the room, probably straightening things that didn't need straightening. "I have to admit, when the secretary mentioned we had a new pianist interested in joining, she didn't mention that that I'm blind," Maya finished for him, keeping her voice steady and calm. She had dealt with this awkwardness before, though it still stung every time. "Well, yes," Peterson said, sounding relieved that she had said it first. "I mean, it's not that there's anything wrong with that, of course. It's just that our program here is quite demanding. We perform for the entire congregation, sometimes for special events with hundreds of people. The music is complex, the timing has to be perfect, and frankly, it requires a level of coordination that might be challenging." Maya felt her cheeks growing warm, but she kept her voice even. "I understand your concerns, Director Peterson. At my previous church, I accompanied a choir of 40 voices for weekly services and special events. I've performed Bach, contemporary worship music, and even some jazz arrangements. I read music in Braille and have an excellent memory for musical pieces." "Braille music," Peterson repeated, as if the concept was foreign to him. "How does that work exactly?" I mean, how can you follow along with the choir if you can't see the conductor? Maya's mother shifted uncomfortably beside her. Maya has perfect pitch and an exceptional ability to follow musical cues by ear. Her previous director always said she was the most reliable accompanist he had ever worked with. Peterson mused, and Maya could hear skepticism in that single sound. Well, I suppose we could give it a try. But I want to be very clear about something. This choir represents Grace Community Church. When we perform, we're not just making music, we're representing our faith community to the broader neighborhood. Everything has to be exactly right. Maya nodded, though inside she felt a knot forming in her stomach. I completely understand. Music is worship for me. I take it very seriously. Good, Peterson said, though his tone suggested he remained unconvinced. The piano's over there in the corner. It's not our best instrument, I'm afraid. The good piano is up in the main sanctuary, but that's reserved for adult services and special occasions. Maya carefully made her way toward the sound she had identified earlier. Her cane found the piano bench first, then her hands located the keyboard. It was an older upright piano, probably hadn't been tuned in several months based on the slight discord she heard when she pressed middle C, but it was still a piano, and any piano was better than no piano. Would you like me to play something? She offered. Peterson paused again. I suppose that would be appropriate. Something simple, though. Maybe just a hymn everyone knows. Maya placed her fingers on the keys and began to play Amazing Grace. But this wasn't just any rendition of the beloved hymn. Her version started quietly, simply, but gradually built into something more complex and beautiful. Her left hand provided a rich bass foundation while her right hand danced through variations on the melody that turned the familiar song into something fresh and moving. As she played, the room seemed to change around her. She could hear Peterson stop moving around, could sense that he was listening more carefully now. Her mother's breathing had quieted, the way it always did when Maya played something particularly beautiful. When she finished, there was silence. For a moment, that was ... Peterson began, then stopped. That was quite good. Though perhaps a bit elaborate for our usual style here, we tend to keep things more straightforward. Maya felt the small hope that had been building deflate slightly. Of course. I can adjust my style to whatever the choir needs. We'll see, Peterson said. Rehearsals are Tuesday and Thursday evenings from 7 to 8:30 and Sunday. Mornings at 9 before service. You'll need to be here every time. No exceptions. The other choir members depend on having consistent accompaniment. I'll be here, Maya promised, as they prepared to leave. Peterson added one more thing. Oh, and Maya? The other students here have been together for several years. They're used to a certain way of doing things. Just try to fit in quietly, okay? Don't call attention to yourself unnecessarily. Walking back down those 15-stone steps, Maya felt different than she had going up. Her mother was unusually quiet, and Maya knew she was probably thinking the same thing Maya was thinking. This was going to be harder than they had hoped. 3 weeks had passed since Maya's first day at Grace Community Church, and each rehearsal had become more difficult than the last. What started as awkward comments from Director Peterson had slowly turned into something much worse. Maya could feel it building like storm clouds gathering overhead. Tuesday evening rehearsal was about to begin. Maya had arrived 15 minutes early, as she always did, to familiarize herself with the piano and get settled before the other students arrived. She could hear them filing into the room now, backpacks dropping, chairs scraping against the floor, the usual chatter of teenagers catching up after school. All right, everyone, let's get started, Director Peterson announced, clapping his hands twice. Today we're working on the harmony sections for Sunday's anthem. Maya, we'll need you to play the parts separately so each section can learn their notes. Maya nodded and placed her fingers on the keys, ready to begin with the soprano line. But as she started to play, Peterson interrupted almost immediately. No, that's too fast, he said sharply. The sopranos can't keep up when you rush like that. Maya slowed her tempo, though she knew she hadn't been playing particularly fast. She tried the section again. Still too fast, Peterson said with an exaggerated sigh. This is exactly what I was concerned about. You can't seem to match the pace. The singer's need. From somewhere in the soprano section, Maya heard a girl's voice speak up quietly. Actually, that sounded fine to me. Thank you, Lisa, but I'll be the judge of what works for this choir, Peterson replied curtly. Maya, try it again. And this time, really focus on keeping it simple and steady. Maya felt her cheeks burning, but she played the section a third time, deliberately slower than felt natural. The melody dragged now, losing all its beauty and flow. Better, Peterson said, though he didn't sound particularly pleased. Now, the alto part. As the rehearsal continued, Peterson found fault with nearly everything Maya played. Her volume was too loud, then too soft. Her style was too complicated, then too boring. When she tried to add simple harmonies to support the choir, he told her to stick to the basic melody and stop showing off. The worst part was that Maya could hear the other students beginning to shift uncomfortably in their chairs. Some of them had tried to defend her at first, but Peterson's constant criticism was wearing everyone down. Maya knew they were starting to wonder if maybe he was right, maybe she really wasn't good enough for this choir. Thursday's rehearsal was even worse. Maya accidentally started playing in the wrong key when Peterson called out a song title she hadn't heard clearly. Instead of simply correcting the mistake, Peterson made a big production of stopping the entire rehearsal. Everyone stop, he called out dramatically. This is what happens when we don't pay attention. Maya, you're in the wrong key entirely. The choir can't follow you if you're not even playing the right notes. I'm sorry, Maya said quietly. Could you repeat which song we're doing? I didn't hear clearly. You didn't hear? Peterson asked, and Maya could hear something nasty creeping into his voice. Well, that's concerning. If you can't hear basic instructions, how can we trust you to hear the musical cues during performance? Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. I can hear fine, Director Peterson. I just didn't catch which specific song title you said because several people were talking at once. I see, Peterson said, and Maya could practically hear him smiling in a way that wasn't friendly. Well, perhaps this is a good time to discuss some of the challenges we've been having. Class, this is actually a valuable lesson about the importance of reliability in a musical group. Maya's hands froze above the piano keys. Surely he wasn't about to. When we perform as a choir, we need to be able to depend on every member of the team. The pianist especially has to be completely focused and aware of everything happening around them. They need to watch the director for tempo changes, follow the choir's breathing, adjust to any unexpected moments during the service. Maya could feel 20 pairs of eyes staring at her. The room had gone completely silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, Peterson continued. Now, I'm not saying anyone is at fault here, but we have to be realistic about everyone's S. capabilities. Some challenges can't be overcome simply through good intentions. Director Peterson, came a voice from the tenor section. It was Jake, a senior who had always been kind to Maya. Maya plays really well. Maybe we could just... Jake, I appreciate your thoughtfulness. Peterson cut him off. But you're not seeing the full picture. Every rehearsal, we have to stop and restart because of timing issues. Every song has to be explained multiple times. The choir members are having to adjust their natural singing to accommodate these ... limitations. Maya felt like she might be sick. Her hands were trembling slightly, and she gripped the edge of the piano bench to steady herself. Perhaps, Peterson said, his voice taking on a tone of false kindness. Maya might be happier in a different type of musical group. Something with less pressure, fewer performance demands. There are community groups that specifically cater to people with special needs. The words hung in the air like poison. Maya heard someone gasp softly, probably Lisa, another student made a small sound of protest. That's not fair, came another voice, this one from the alto section. Maya's playing is beautiful. She's better than any pianist we've had before. Amy, please, Peterson said, sounding irritated now. This isn't about talent, it's about practical concerns. What happens during a performance when something goes wrong? What if the choir needs to stop and restart? What if there's an emergency and we need to change songs quickly? These are real issues that affect everyone. Maya stood up slowly from the piano bench. Her whole body felt numb, like she was moving through water. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "I need to use the restroom." She made her way carefully toward the door, her cane tapping against chairs and music stands. Behind her, she could hear Peterson's voice continuing, something about making difficult decisions and what's best for the group. In the hallway, Maya leaned against the wall and tried to breathe normally. Her chest felt tight and she could feel tears threatening behind her eyes. She had worked so hard to prove herself, had practiced every song until she knew it perfectly, had arrived early and stayed late to make sure she never held anyone back, but maybe Peterson was right. Maybe she was kidding herself. Maybe she really was too much trouble, too complicated, too different. She could hear footsteps in the hallway. Someone had followed her out of the rehearsal room. "Maya," it was Lisa's voice, soft and concerned. "Are you okay?" Maya wiped her eyes quickly, hoping her tears weren't obvious. "I'm fine. Just needed some air." "What he said in there was horrible," Lisa said firmly. "Everyone thinks so. Amy and Jake are telling him right now that he's wrong. It's okay," Maya said, though it wasn't okay at all. "Maybe he has a point. Maybe I should look for something else." "Don't you dare," Lisa said, and there was fierce determination in her young voice. "You're the best pianist this choir has ever had. Everyone knows it, even if you won't admit it." But as they walked back toward the music room together, Maya couldn't shake Peterson's words. They followed her home that night, echoed in her dreams, and sat heavy on her heart for days afterward. Maybe some dreams were just too big for someone like her. Maya sat in her bedroom that Friday night, staring at nothing through her dark glasses. The humiliation from Thursday's rehearsal still burned in her chest like a physical pain. She had barely eaten dinner, barely spoken to her parents, barely done anything except replay Director Peterson's words over and over in her mind. Her fingers traced the Braille music sheets, scattered across her desk, songs she had been practicing for weeks, pieces she knew by heart, melodies that usually brought her joy. Tonight, they just reminded her of everything that had gone wrong. A soft knock on her bedroom door interrupted her thoughts. "Maya, can I come in?" It was her father's voice, gentle and concerned. "Sure, Dad," she said, trying to sound normal. She heard the door creak open and her father's footsteps crossing the room. The bed dipped slightly as he sat down beside her. "Your mom told me what happened at rehearsal yesterday," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." That director was completely out of line. Maya felt tears starting again, which frustrated her. She had been crying on and off for 2 days. "Maybe he's right, Dad. Maybe I really am too much trouble. Maybe I should just quit." "Maya Elizabeth Chun," her father said, using her full name the way he did when he wanted her to really listen. "I have heard you play piano since you were 3 years old. I have watched you bring grown adults to tears with your music. Don't you dare let one ignorant man make you doubt your gift." But Maya just shook her head. "It's not just about the music, Dad. It's about everything else. I can't see the conductor. I can't read their regular sheet music. I need special accommodations that other people don't need. Maybe I should find something easier." Her father was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Do you remember what happened when you were 8 years old? At your first piano recital?" Maya smiled slightly despite her sadness. She did remember. She had been terrified to perform in front of all those people, convinced she would mess up and embarrass herself. But when she sat down at that piano and started playing, something magical had happened. The fear disappeared, and there was only the music. Afterward, her father continued, Mrs. Patterson from down the street came up to us with tears in her eyes. She said your playing reminded her of her grandmother, who had passed away the year before. She said it was like hearing her grandmother's voice again. Maya remembered that too. It was the first time she realized her music could touch other people in ways she never expected. That gift doesn't go away because one person is too small-minded to see it, her father said softly, Saturday morning came and went. Maya stayed in her room, practicing on her electric keyboard with headphones on. She played angry pieces, dramatic classical compositions that matched her mood. Chopin's Revolutionary Etude, Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor, pieces that let her pour all her frustration into the keys, but by Sunday afternoon something had shifted inside her. Maybe it was her father's words, or maybe it was just her own stubborn nature refusing to give up. She found herself thinking about the beautiful grand piano she had glimpsed in the main sanctuary on her first day at the church. That evening, she made a decision. Monday morning, Maya woke up 2 hours earlier than usual. She dressed quietly, grabbed her music bag and her cane, and slipped out of the house before her parents were awake. The early morning air was crisp and cool as she made her way to the church. The building was mostly empty at this hour. Maya used her key. Director Peterson had given copies to all the choir members for early practice sessions, though she doubted he expected her to use hers like this. The hallways echoed with her footsteps as she made her way through the building, but instead of going to the small music room with the old upright piano, Maya headed toward the main sanctuary. She had only been in there once, briefly, but she remembered the layout. 20 rows of wooden pews, a raised platform at the front, and somewhere up there, the grand piano that she had heard other people mention in passing. Finding it took a few minutes of careful exploration. Her fingers finally found the familiar shape of a piano bench, then the smooth edge of what felt like a much larger, much nicer instrument than the one in the youth room. Maya sat down and placed her hands on the keys. Even without playing a note, she could tell this piano was special. The keys felt perfectly balanced under her fingers, smooth and responsive. When she finally pressed middle C, the sound that came out was rich and pure, with none of the slight buzzing that plagued the upright piano downstairs. She started with something simple. Amazing Grace, the same song she had played for Director Peterson on her first day. But this time, on this piano, in this space, it sounded completely different. The acoustics of the large sanctuary wrapped around the music, amplifying it and giving it depth she had never experienced before. As she played, Maya felt something loosening in her chest. The hurt and anger from the past few weeks began to melt away, replaced by something stronger and more determined. This was who she was. This was what she was meant to do. She moved on to more complex pieces. Bach's Prelude in C major, which started simply but grew into something intricate and beautiful. Then some contemporary worship songs, but played with variations and harmonies that made them sound fresh and new. Time seemed to disappear. Maya lost herself completely in the music, her fingers dancing across the keys as she played. Everything from classical masterpieces to modern songs to pieces she improvised on the spot. The sanctuary became her own private concert hall, where no one could criticize her or make her feel small. She was in the middle of a particularly beautiful arrangement of How Great Thou Art when she heard a sound that made her freeze. Footsteps. Someone else was in the sanctuary. Maya's hands lifted off the keys immediately, her heart pounding. Had she been caught? Was she in trouble for being here? "Please don't stop," came a voice from somewhere behind her. It was an older man's voice, gentle and kind. That was the most beautiful thing I've heard in years. Maya turned around on the piano bench, though she couldn't see who was speaking. "I'm sorry, I didn't think anyone else would be here this early. I can leave if—" No, please stay," the man said, and she could hear him walking closer. "I'm Miguel, the church janitor. I've been coming in early for 20 years, and I've never heard playing like that. You have a real gift, young lady." Relief flooded through Maya. "Thank you. I'm Maya. I play for the youth choir." "Ah, you're Maya," Miguel said, and she could hear warmth in his voice. "I've heard some of the church ladies talking about you. They say you're something special." "I don't know about that," Maya said quietly. Miguel was closer now, probably standing near the front pew. "Let me tell you something, Maya. I've been taking care of this church for 2 decades. I've heard thousands of people play that piano. Professionals, amateurs, everyone in between. What you just played, that came from somewhere deeper than just technique. That came from the heart. Maya felt tears welling up again, but these were different tears. Director Peterson doesn't think I belong here. Miguel made a sound of dismissal. Peterson's been here too long. He's forgotten what music is really about. But you? You haven't forgotten. Don't let anyone make you forget. As Maya prepared to leave, Miguel said one more thing. You come back anytime you want, okay? Early mornings, late evenings, whenever you need to play. This piano needs someone who understands what it's capable of. Walking home that morning, Maya felt different than she had in weeks. Stronger, more sure of herself. She had found her sanctuary. Her place to practice and grow and remember who she really was. From that day forward, Maya began a secret routine. Every morning before school, every evening after homework, she would slip into the sanctuary and play the grand piano. Each session made her stronger, more confident, more determined to prove that she belonged exactly where she was. December 23rd. Maya would remember this date for the rest of her life, though she had no idea when she woke up that morning just how much everything was about to change. For the past 3 months, Maya had been living two completely different musical lives. During regular choir rehearsals, she endured Director Peterson's constant criticism and barely managed to get through each session without crying. But in the early morning hours and quiet evenings, she transformed into a completely different pianist in the sanctuary, pouring her heart into the grand piano that had become her refuge. The annual Christmas concert was scheduled for that evening. It was Grace Community Church's biggest event of the year, a formal concert that drew people from all over the community. Maya had been practicing the accompaniment pieces for weeks, though Peterson had made it clear she would only be playing the simple, basic versions of each song. Nothing fancy, nothing that might draw attention away from the choir. Maya sat at the breakfast table, picking at her scrambled eggs. Her stomach was too nervous to handle much food. Tonight would be her first major performance at this church, and despite months of Peterson's discouragement, she desperately wanted to do well. You're going to be wonderful tonight, sweetheart, her mother said, refilling Maya's orange juice. I've heard you practicing those Christmas songs, and they sound beautiful. Thanks, Mom, Maya replied, though she couldn't shake the feeling that something was going to go wrong. Peterson had been especially critical during this week's rehearsals, reminding her multiple times to keep it simple and not get creative. The phone rang just as Maya was finishing breakfast. Her father answered it in the living room, and she could hear his voice, but not the words. When he came back to the kitchen, his expression was troubled. That was the church secretary, he said quietly to Maya's mother. There's been some kind of emergency with tonight's concert. Maya's heart sank. What kind of emergency? Her father sat down at the table, looking serious. The guest pianist they hired for the special Christmas pieces, Mrs. Rodriguez, she's in the hospital. Her daughter called this morning to say she had a heart attack last night. She's stable, but obviously can't perform tonight. Maya felt terrible for Mrs. Rodriguez, but she was also confused. What does that mean for the concert? Will they cancel it? No, they can't cancel, her mother said, understanding the situation immediately. 500 people have tickets. The church has been advertising this for months. Some people are coming from other towns just for this concert? Maya's father nodded grimly. The secretary said Director Peterson is in a complete panic. Mrs. Rodriguez was supposed to play 3 major solo pieces, plus accompany the adult choir for their special numbers. Now they have less than 8 hours to find a replacement, and it's 2 days before Christmas. Every professional pianist in the area is either busy with their own church services or already committed to family celebrations. As the morning went on, Maya tried to focus on her usual routine, but she couldn't stop thinking about the concert. She imagined hundreds of people arriving tonight, excited for beautiful Christmas music, only to be disappointed. She thought about the adult choir members who had been practicing their special songs for months, now facing the possibility that they wouldn't be able to perform at all. Around noon, Maya's mother got another phone call. This time it was Lisa from the youth choir calling Maya directly. Maya, you're not going to believe what's happening at the church. Lisa said, her voice excited and worried at the same time. Director Peterson is going absolutely crazy trying to find someone to replace Mrs. Rodriguez. He's called everyone. He knows, but nobody can do it on such short notice. Maya listened as Lisa explained that Peterson had been on the phone all morning, growing more desperate with each failed attempt to find a pianist. The church secretary had suggested asking some of the more advanced students from the local music college, but they were all gone for Christmas break. Mrs. Thompson from the church office suggested something to Peterson. Lisa continued, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. She said maybe you could fill in. You know, all the Christmas music and you've been playing for churches? For years, Maya's breath caught in her throat. What did Peterson say? He basically said absolutely not. He told her that would be impossible, that the pieces are too advanced, that it would ruin the whole concert. Lisa paused. But Maya, I've heard you practice. I know you could do it. You're better than Mrs. Rodriguez ever was. After the call ended, Maya couldn't sit still. She paced around her room, her mind racing. She knew those Christmas pieces Lisa was talking about. She had been playing O Holy Night with complex arrangements since she was 12. Silent Night was one of her specialties. She had even performed Mary Had a Baby with jazz variations that made people cry. But Peterson would never give her the chance. In his mind, she was barely capable of playing simple accompaniment, let alone handling the featured solo pieces that were the highlight of the entire concert. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, Maya made a decision that surprised even herself. She told her parents she was going to the church to practice one more time before the concert. What she didn't tell them was that she planned to practice the pieces. Mrs. Rodriguez was supposed to play. The church was buzzing with activity when Maya arrived. She could hear people setting up chairs in the fellowship hall, testing sound equipment, and decorating the sanctuary with Christmas flowers. Maya slipped quietly through all the commotion and made her way to the sanctuary. The grand piano sat, waiting for her just as it had every morning and evening for the past 3 months. Maya sat down and opened her bag, pulling out the braille sheet music she had been secretly practicing, the real versions of tonight's featured pieces, not the simplified arrangements Peterson had given the youth choir. She started with O Holy Night, playing it the way she had learned it years ago at her old church. Her fingers moved confidently through the complex introduction, building to the soaring melody that seemed to fill every corner of the sanctuary. The acoustics made every note ring clearly, creating harmonies and echoes that gave the music an almost heavenly quality. Next, she played Silent Night, but not the basic version everyone knew. This was an arrangement that started softly and simply, then gradually built layers of harmony and rhythm that transformed the gentle lullaby into something magnificent and powerful. Maya was so lost in the music that she didn't notice she had an audience until she finished the song and heard quiet applause behind her. She turned around quickly, her heart hammering. "Hello? Who's there?" "It's just me, dear," came a woman's voice. Maya recognized it as Mrs. Thompson, the church secretary who had been working at Grace Community for over 30 years. "I was checking the sanctuary before tonight's concert and I heard this incredible music." "Maya, that was absolutely beautiful." Maya felt her cheeks burning. "I'm sorry if I wasn't supposed to be practicing in here. I just wanted to go through the songs one more time before tonight." "Oh, honey, you can practice here anytime you want," Mrs. Thompson said warmly. "But Maya, those pieces you just played, those weren't the simple versions from youth choir, were they?" Maya hesitated, then shook her head. "No, ma'am. Those were the pieces Mrs. Rodriguez was supposed to play tonight." There was a long pause. Then Mrs. Thompson said quietly, "Maya, how many of those pieces do you know?" "All of them," Maya admitted. "I've been playing Christmas music for years. I know probably 50 different Christmas songs, including all the ones that were planned for tonight's concert." Mrs. Thompson was quiet for such a long time that Maya started to worry she had said something wrong. Finally, the older woman spoke. "Maya, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. If you had the chance to save tonight's concert, To play those pieces for 500 people who are counting on hearing beautiful Christmas music, would you be willing to do it? Maya's heart started racing. Mrs. Thompson, Director Peterson would never ... Let me worry about Director Peterson, Mrs. Thompson said firmly. Right now, I'm asking you, could you do it? Would you do it? Maya thought about all the people who had bought tickets, all the choir members who had practiced for months, all the families who were planning to come together for this special night. She thought about her months of secret practice, her growing confidence, her love for Christmas music. Yes, she said quietly. I could do it, I would do it. Then wait right here, Mrs. Thompson said. I need to make a phone call. Maya sat alone in the sanctuary, her hands trembling slightly as she waited for Mrs. Thompson to return. Through the walls, she could hear the sounds of final preparations, people testing microphones, arranging flowers, setting up programs on every seat. In just 3 hours, 500 people would fill this space, expecting to hear the most beautiful Christmas concert of the year. The sanctuary doors opened with a soft creak, and Maya heard multiple sets of footsteps approaching. Mrs. Thompson's voice came first, followed by deeper voices she didn't recognize, and then Director Peterson. Maya's stomach dropped. There she is, Mrs. Thompson said gently. Maya, I'd like you to meet Pastor Williams and Mr. Chun, our head of church council. Maya stood up from the piano bench, smoothing her sweater nervously. Hello, she said quietly. Maya, Pastor Williams said, his voice kind but serious. Mrs. Thompson tells us you might be able to help us with tonight's concert. She says you know the pieces Mrs. Rodriguez was planning to play. Before Maya could. Sir, Director Peterson's voice cut through the air like a knife. Pastor Williams, with all due respect, this is not a realistic solution. Those pieces are extremely complex. They require years of advanced training and professional experience. This is our most important fundraising event of the year, and we cannot risk. Bill, Pastor Williams said firmly, using Peterson's first name in a way that clearly meant the conversation was over. Mrs. Thompson heard Maya play those exact pieces just 20 minutes ago. Why don't we let Maya show us what she can do? Before we make any decisions? Maya felt like her legs might give out. Everyone was staring at her. She could feel their attention like heat from a fire. This was the moment she had been unknowingly preparing for during all those months of secret practice, all those early mornings and quiet evenings in this very sanctuary. Maya, Pastor Williams said gently, would you mind playing one of tonight's featured pieces for us? Just so we can hear what Mrs. Thompson heard. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice to work properly. She sat back down at the grand piano, the same instrument that had become her friend and confidant over the past months. Her fingers found the keys automatically, and she took a deep breath. She chose, Oh, Holy Night, not because it was the easiest, but because it was the piece that had always moved her most deeply. As her fingers began the intricate introduction, Maya felt the familiar calm that always came when she played. The nervousness faded away. Replaced by the pure joy of making music, the arrangement she played was far beyond anything Peterson had ever heard from her. It started with a delicate, almost whisper-soft melody that seemed to float through the air like snowflakes. Then gradually, carefully, she began adding layers, a rich bass line with her left hand, subtle harmonies that made the familiar tune sound fresh and new, dynamic changes that built the song into something magnificent. When she reached the climactic high note, fall on your knees. Oh, hear the angel voices. Her playing soared with such beauty and power that the sanctuary seemed to vibrate with the music. Maya poured everything into that moment, all her months of frustration, all her love for music, all her determination to prove that she belonged here. As the final notes faded away, the silence in the sanctuary was complete. Maya sat with her hands still resting on the keys, hardly daring to breathe. Then she heard something that made her heart stop. Someone was crying, soft, quiet tears, but definitely crying. My goodness, Pastor Williams whispered. Maya, that was extraordinary. I've never heard anything like it, Mr. Chun added, his voice full of amazement. Mrs. Rodriguez is a fine pianist, but this was something else entirely. Maya turned toward where she thought Director Peterson was standing. For a long moment there was only silence from his direction. Then she heard him clear his throat, a sound that seemed smaller and less confident than usual. Peterson struggled with his words. Maya, I had no idea you were capable of playing at that level. The technique, the musicality, it's far beyond what I expected. Maya felt tears starting in her eyes, but these were different tears than she had cried in months past. These were tears of relief, of vindication, of finally being heard. Maya, Pastor William said, I think I speak for all of us when I say we would be honored to have you perform tonight's concert. But I need to ask you honestly, do you feel ready for this? It's a big responsibility, and there will be a lot of people counting on you. Maya thought about all the early morning practice sessions, all the evenings she had spent perfecting these exact pieces, all the times she had imagined herself playing for a real audience instead of empty pews and cleaning supplies. Yes, she said, her voice stronger than she had expected. I'm ready. 3 hours later, Maya stood backstage in the small room behind the sanctuary, listening to the sounds of hundreds of people filling the pews. Her parents had arrived an hour early, brought by Mrs. Thompson's excited phone call. Her mother had cried when she heard the news, and her father had simply hugged her tight and whispered, I'm so proud of you. Lisa and several other youth choir members had stopped by to wish her luck, their faces glowing with excitement and pride. Even Jake had come over to shake her hand and tell her that everyone in the youth choir was rooting for her. 5 minutes, Maya. Mrs. Thompson called softly through the door. Maya walked carefully to the sanctuary entrance, her cane helping her navigate around the flowers and equipment that had been added for the concert. When she stepped into the sanctuary proper, a wave of sound hit her, 500 people talking, laughing, rustling programs, finding their seats. But as she made her way to the piano, the conversations began to die down. People noticed her, pointed her out to their neighbors, whispered questions about who she was. Maya had never performed for an audience this large, and for a moment, the enormity of it all threatened to overwhelm her. Then she sat down at the grand piano, her piano, the instrument that had become her sanctuary, and everything else faded away. Pastor William stepped to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Grace Community Church's annual Christmas concert. Due to a family emergency, our scheduled pianist, Mrs. Rodriguez, cannot be with us tonight. However, we are blessed to have one of our own talented young musicians, Maya Chun, who will be performing tonight's featured pieces. Maya heard scattered applause, but also some murmurs of uncertainty. She knew people were wondering if a teenager could really handle the sophisticated music they had come to hear. She placed her fingers on the keys and began with Silent Night, but not the simple version everyone knew. This arrangement started so softly that people had to lean forward to hear it, drawing them in immediately. Then slowly, carefully, she began building the song into something magical. As the music filled the sanctuary, Maya could feel the audience changing. The restless shifting stopped. The whispered conversations died away completely. Even the small children seemed to sense that something special was happening. She moved through the evening's program, like she had been born for this moment. Oh, come, Emmanuel, with variations that made the ancient melody sound both timeless and fresh. Mary had a baby with jazz influences that had people swaying in their seats. Angels we have heard on high, with runs and flourishes that seemed to actually bring angels into the room, but it was her final piece that truly stunned everyone. She had chosen to end with her own arrangement of Joy to the World, an interpretation she had been working on during her secret practice sessions. It started with the familiar melody, but then exploded into a celebration of sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. When the last note faded away, the silence lasted for what felt like forever. Then suddenly, as if a dam had burst, the entire sanctuary erupted in thunderous applause. People leaped to their feet, some wiping away tears, others simply staring in amazement. Maya sat at the piano, overwhelmed by the response. She had done it. She had proven to herself, to Director Peterson, to everyone, that she belonged exactly where she was. As the applause continued, Maya heard Director Peterson's voice over the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, and she could hear the emotion in his words, "I owe this remarkable young woman a sincere apology. Maya Chen has just given us one of the most extraordinary musical performances this church has ever witnessed. I was wrong about her abilities, and I am deeply, deeply sorry." The standing ovation continued for several more minutes as Maya's parents made their way to the front of the sanctuary, their faces shining with pride and joy. Her father hugged her tight and whispered in her ear, "That's my daughter. That's my incredibly talented daughter." From that night forward, Maya became Grace Community Church's principal pianist, and Director Peterson became her biggest supporter. But more importantly, Maya had learned something about herself that no one could ever take away: that true talent, combined with determination and hard work, will always find a way to shine.